Hey y'all, welcome back to the shop. It's Airfink again, and boy oh boy do I have another fun toy to show you today. So, I have a problem. I like this hobby. I like this hobby a lot, and I keep finding cool stuff. And the cool stuff that I've most recently found is this. Another Asteroids cocktail. And you say, why do you need another Asteroids cocktail? Well, that one's not an Asteroids cocktail anymore. It's getting raspberry pied. This one has all the bits. This one has everything in it. And I could not resist the price either. This was very nicely priced by a fellow who apparently couldn't be bothered to list it correctly on Craigslist. He put it in the recreational vehicle section and he misspelled asteroids. I'm not exactly sure how I stumbled across it, but it was listed for an absolute song, so I had to have it. And it is in really very nice shape, all things considered. A little bit of rust on the steel. Control panels, however, are not rusty, just grimy. The artwork's in really nice shape. Normally this black banding here is all crumbled up. This one's in pretty good shape. You can tell the glass hasn't been taken off and put back on again too many times because this has a tendency to stick to the wood underneath, and it peels up and it crumbles. So this one's actually in great shape, and the cardboard bezel, see if I can get it to focus here. It's there. It's in pretty good shape. That's nice. That piece typically gets lost or destroyed after it's been serviced a few times. The only issue with it, of course, is that it was sold to me not working. When I bought it, it did absolutely nothing. And I'm going to open it up here and give you a little brief walkthrough of the stuff that I've done on it so far. It's still not fully working yet, but it's better than it was. I'm going to pause the video here so I don't have to fumble with a screwdriver while I'm holding a camera. Actually, before I take the screwdriver to this thing, I should just point out, you notice something funny about this? Other than the lock missing? Yeah. We'll get to that in a second. And the door is currently held on with some screws. Not ideal. It's the only real part of this from a cosmetic standpoint that I really feel I have to fix. And once I open it up, you'll see why. Okay, got it all opened up here. And we'll start over here, because this is the roughest part of this. So, this cabinet has been dragged along the ground at some point. So this leg here and the leg bolts into this side panel right here. And this has gone for a good drag because this has all separated out right here. So all these staples that go through this block right here to hold this together, they've all popped out. So the only thing holding this entire side on here is this joint right here. And the clips, which you cannot probably see in the dark, these clips that hold the top of the cabinet on, that's all that's keeping that side of the cabinet from just collapsing under the weight of everything. And you can see the bottom is not supported and sagging down, so that's why the door has this giant gap that gets wider as it goes this way. So this is the first thing to tackle, I think, is to get this repaired. Because this is not sound. This will fall apart. So I'm gonna inject some glue. I'm not sure what kind of glue I want to use yet. Maybe a Gorilla Glue or something that expands, because this is kind of rough now. It's all tattered up from getting split. And get it clamped with some clamps that can go all the way across the entire body of the cabinet. Other than that bit of damage, this is actually in remarkably good shape. everything is serial number matched. The monitor serial numbers, the AR1 over here, serial numbers, serial number for the circuit board, serial number on the cabinet itself, and the serial numbers on all of the original manuals, which were packed in their original plastic bag, all match. So this has not been board swapped at any time, which is kind of cool. The board has had a few repairs here and there, and it was in pretty tough shape when I got it. All of these chips that were socketed here were very badly corroded. The pins were just black, and I'll try and superimpose an image of that over the video here. You can see a little bit of that still remaining here on the 6502. So I pulled all of them out and lapped them with some 3000 grit sandpaper and contact cleaner and got them cleaned up and got it to actually the point where it will now boot in test mode. But there's still some graphical issues, and I'm not sure what the deal is. Right now, I suspect something with the vector state machine, because it watchdogs immediately after you start the game, but it doesn't watchdog on the test screen. So there's still a lot of debugging to do. These boards are huge and complex messes of discrete logic, and it could be a million different things. So that may take a while to track down. One thing that people who are into classic Atari machines will know is that the AR1 is notorious in its original version 1 state for burning up the power connector. So the AR stands for audio and regulation. It's responsible for amplifying the audio, and it's also responsible for basically acting as a power regulator. So it provides a 5 volt and then another voltage that's, not regulated, that's somewhere between 10.3 and like 12 volts, somewhere in there. So I haven't recapped it because the caps all seemed like they were still okay. I would like to recap it at some point just, for longevity's sake, but right now it's all right. But what I noticed, of course, is that the sense mod had not been done. So one of the problems with the AR1 that's really common is it has a sense feature where it wants to provide 5 volts to this giant circuit board. And, the connector's way over here. You got stuff way over on this other edge here, and you get enough resistance across the entire board that your voltage drops, right? So the chips on this side of the board can wind up getting starved and undervolting, which is less than ideal. So under normal conditions, as this was designed from the factory, there would be a sense wire that's part of this harness that it basically is supposed to sense the voltage on the board. So it's just a big loop that goes out and comes back. And it's supposed to say, okay, well, the voltage has dropped by a certain amount by the time it comes back on the other side of this huge loop. And then it would raise the voltage if the voltage has dropped too much. Well, the problem, of course, with that design is as these connectors age, corrosion sets in, the resistance of the connectors rises, so the power supply increases power. And it eventually gets into a feedback loop where if these are not perfectly cleaned on a routine basis, it'll just literally burn up the connectors. And so a very common thing to be done to these is to basically short across the sense lines so that it no longer has to travel this huge path, and you eliminate any possibility that a bad connection here would cause the voltage to spike super high and fry your chips or literally burn the connectors. This one here, you can tell that the previous owner did a pretty good job of keeping the pins nice and clean. these were mirror-like shine when I first opened this up. So they knew what they were doing. At least at some point along the line. But I decided to do the Sense mod anyways because I noticed that I was getting a lot of voltage drops and just very inconsistent and erratic behavior from the board, where sometimes it would boot, but then if the garage got really cold and I'd try to turn it on, then it wouldn't boot. So I just decided to Sense mod it and be done with it. And now it boots up every time, at least as far as it can boot. There's some issues here. Now, right now I have the monitor disconnected, and I had my oscilloscope that I am borrowing from my dad, so that I could look at the XY trace without burning up the monitor, because that's a common problem with these. Is if you're testing things out and the spot killer circuit doesn't work, you can kill the monitor, or at least burn it. And this one has some moderate burn, so I didn't want to do that. So I'll pause the video here and I'll plug in the monitor and show you what it does right now in its current state of repair. So with the service switch set in the up position, this is what we get. The up position indicates gameplay position. So if you're familiar at all with Asteroids, normally you would have, some text displaying across the top for scores. You'd have your little insert coin thing blinking. You'd see some asteroids flying around, a little flying saucer, and you'd see high scores printing in the middle. Of course, we don't see any of that. We just get a couple of little lines and dots moving around. And I've blown up this on the scope as well, so the scope will let me zoom in and look at the trace. And these dots in XY mode, they're just dots. It's not like a failure of the scaling circuit alone. There's something else going on where it's not even attempting to draw the shapes. It's just a point. So something's happening in the state machine where it's not getting the information that it needs to actually draw the shapes. And I know that the monitor and the output stage on the PCB are working perfectly because the scope shows exactly the same image as what we're seeing here. And my Z output also looks great. When I pull up the Z waveform on the scope, I get all 5 voltages that you'd expect to see for the 5 Z intensities. So something's happening deeper in the state machine that's causing this behavior. And as soon as you start the game, it immediately crashes. So you'll notice I've got it set on free play. So the start buttons blink, and if I push the start button, it just crashes immediately and dumps back into this mode. So what will happen with the watchdog is if it detects that some error has taken place after a moment, it just resets the system. So it does exactly the same thing as it would do if I pushed the reset button on the circuit board. So now let's switch it into test mode, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, now we're in test mode. And again, if you're familiar with Asteroids, you know that this pattern, the so-called chain link, this is how you tell if you've got any problems with your output stage. So if there were problems with the output stage, you would not expect these lines to be straight. You would expect, waviness, jagginess to them. But these lines are perfectly straight. They line up great. There's just a little teeny bit of overlap there. That's absolutely nothing to be concerned about. And just in general, this is looking beautiful. The monitor itself is in very good health. But of course, as you can see, normally we would display our dip switch settings here in the test, and then any test codes that it comes up with would display here as well. And none of that is displaying. And it does beep when I push the buttons. So, I have reason to believe that the issue is possibly damage to the state machine PROM, or possibly some bad address lines somewhere, or a bad address counter, something like that. Possibly a bad socket, but I would expect more intermittentness of these failures. Normally with a bad socket, you would expect a failure to be, it would come and go, or you could make it, glitch out by tapping on it or something like that. That's my experience with bad sockets. It's possible the sockets are bad, and I do intend to replace every socket on this board with a brand new socket just as a preventative measure, because the sockets that are on the board are gold plated, and I suspect that may be why the chips are so badly corroded, the ones that are in the sockets anyways, just from the bimetallic action corroding the legs. So anyways, there's tons of work to be done on this board to get it functioning. Or there may not be. Like I said, I haven't dug too deep into it, so it may be that I stumble upon the solution very early. Oh, maybe. I don't know. I guess we'll have to find out. Hopefully I remember to take some video while I'm doing that service. I totally forgot to take video of the work that I've already done on it so far, because this is exciting. It was a great find. Anyways, that's all I've got for today's video. Hopefully I'll see you all again soon in a new video. See you next time. Bye.